The villa's ancient wooden door slammed shut with a thunderclap that echoed through the sun-baked hills of Andalusia, sealing Dakota inside a world that had just shattered into a million jagged pieces. "You think I wouldn't find out?" Dakota's voice cracked like dry earth under a summer storm, her hazel eyes blazing as she hurled the bank statement across the kitchen table, where it fluttered down like a dying bird onto the tiled floor. In the dimming light filtering through the wrought iron shutters, her 12-year-old daughter, Riley, froze in the doorway, her small face paling as if she'd just witnessed the unraveling of the only safe thread in her universe. Dakota had always believed in the kind of love that stories were made of, the slow-burn kind that started with stolen glances across a crowded Brooklyn coffee shop and bloomed into a life stitched together with quiet promises. She and Delisa had met 15 years ago, back when Dakota was a wide-eyed photography student hustling freelance gigs in New York, and Delisa was the sharp-tongued graphic designer with a laugh that could disarm a room. They were both dreamers, the type who talked about escaping the grind for something real, something sun-soaked and unscripted. Spain, Delisa had whispered one rainy night, her fingers tracing patterns on Dakota's collarbone. "We'll take Riley there someday, show her the world beyond these concrete cages." Dakota had laughed, pulling her closer, believing every word because Delisa's blue eyes held the kind of fire that made forever feel possible. They'd made it happen 5 years later, after Riley came along, a surprise IVF miracle, all freckles and boundless curiosity, with Dakota's green eyes and a mop of auburn curls that tangled like wild vines. The move to West Spain, as they jokingly called the rugged coastal stretch near Cadiz, was supposed to be their reinvention. Dakota turned her lens on the landscape, olive groves silvered by moonlight, whitewashed villages clinging to cliffs like forgotten prayers, the endless crash of the Atlantic against hidden coves. She sold prints to tourists and locals alike, building a modest name for herself in the expat art scene. Delisa, ever the hustler, launched a remote design firm catering to American brands hungry for that authentic European vibe. Their villa, a rambling finca with lemon trees in the courtyard and a rooftop terrace overlooking the sea, became a haven. Mornings started with fresh pan con tomate and Riley's chatter about school and the bilingual program. Afternoons dissolved into lazy siestas where Dakota and Delisa would steal kisses in the hammock, their hands lingering like they were still 20-somethings defying the world. But cracks had started forming, subtle at first, like hairline fractures in porcelain. Delisa's late-night calls, dismissed as client emergencies. The way her laughter grew sharper, more distant, echoing from the balcony where she'd smoke alone under the stars. Dakota chalked it up to burnout, the relentless ping of emails, the cultural whiplash of living between two worlds. "We're Americans in Spain, baby," she'd tease, wrapping her arms around Delisa's waist from behind. "We're supposed to be romantic outlaws, not corporate zombies." Delisa would lean back, her head on Dakota's shoulder, murmuring agreements that felt increasingly hollow. Riley noticed too, in her child's way. "Why does Mama D look sad when she thinks we're not watching?" she'd ask Dakota over homework, her pencil hovering uncertainly over fractions. The betrayal hit like a rogue wave on a calm day. It was a Tuesday in late spring, the air heavy with jasmine and the distant hum of cicadas. Dakota had been sorting through their joint accounts, a mundane chore she'd put off for weeks, when the numbers didn't add up. The college fund, the one they'd scrimped for since Riley's birth, socking away every bonus, every side gig, dreaming of Ivy League gates swinging open for their girl, had been gutted. 80,000 euros vanished into a black hole of wire transfers to an offshore account. Tracing it back through the bank's labyrinthine app, Dakota's stomach churned as the recipient's name surfaced: Sofia Reyes, a sleek Madrid gallery owner with a reputation for launching edgy talents and an even edgier personal life. Sofia. The name alone twisted like a knife. Dakota remembered her vaguely from an art fair in Seville last fall, a vision in emerald silk, all sharp cheekbones and knowing smiles, the kind of woman who collected admirers like modern art. Delisa had introduced them casually, her hand brushing Sofia's a beat too long. "Potential collaborator," she'd said later, waving off Dakota's raised eyebrow. Now, piecing it together, the late nights made sense: client meetings, in Madrid, weekend networking retreats. The stolen fund. A down payment on Sofia's latest obsession, a glossy loft in the city, or perhaps a joint venture masked as love. Dakota's hands shook as she scrolled through deleted emails recovered from the trash folder, whispers of our future, plans for a life without the baggage. Baggage. That was Riley. That was them. Rage propelled Dakota to the door when Delisa finally walked in, arms laden with market bags of figs and manchego, her blonde bob catching the light like nothing had changed. The groceries hit the floor in a soft avalanche, cheese rolling under the table like fleeing secrets. Dakota, what the hell? Delisa's voice was a whip crack, but her eyes, those piercing blues, darted to Riley, who had crept in from the garden, dirt-streaked knees from tending her herb pots. You stole from her, Dakota hissed, pointing at their daughter, who shrank back against the wall, clutching a trowel like a shield. From us. For her. Sophia. Don't even try to lie. The air thickened, the villa's cool stone walls closing in like a confessional. Delisa's face crumpled, not in denial, but in a weary surrender that hurt worse than screams. It wasn't supposed to. I was going to pay it back. Sophia's gallery, it's a sure thing. We could all. All? Dakota laughed, a bitter bark that echoed off the beams. You mean you and your new muse? While Riley dreams of Stanford, you're funding your escape hatch. Riley whimpered, dropping the trowel with a clatter that silenced them both. In that moment, as the three of them stood frozen in the kitchen's golden haze, Dakota saw it, the end of their story, unraveling not in some grand cinematic betrayal, but in the quiet theft of a child's future. The days that followed blurred into a haze of slammed doors and whispered accusations. Dakota moved into the guest room, its narrow bed a fortress of resentment, while Riley tiptoed between them like a diplomat in a war zone. School became Riley's refuge, her backpack heavier with books borrowed from the library, tales of resilient heroines, girls who bent the world to their will. Dakota threw herself into her darkroom, developing prints of stormy seas and shadowed faces, each emulsion a catharsis. But at night, when the finca creaked under the weight of unspoken grief, she'd hear Delisa's sobs from the master bedroom, and her heart would fracture anew. Love didn't die cleanly, it lingered like smoke, choking the air. One evening, as the sun dipped into the Atlantic, painting the courtyard in bruised purples, Riley cornered Dakota by the lemon tree. Mom, why can't we just leave? Go back to America, start over. Without her. Her voice was small but steel-edged, green eyes mirroring Dakota's own turmoil. Dakota knelt, brushing soil from Riley's cheek. Because love's not a straight line, kiddo. It's a mess. And your Mama D, she's still part of us, even if it hurts. Riley nodded, but in her 12-year-old mind, a seed of resolve took root, fierce, unyielding, the kind that turns tides. Delisa tried to bridge the chasm, flowers wilting on the table untouched, apologies scrawled on notepads that Dakota burned in the hearth. I was lost, Dakota. Sophia made me feel seen. Alive. But you're my anchor. Lies, half-truths, woven with enough truth to sting. Dakota wanted to believe, to rewind to those hammock days, but trust was a currency she'd spent her last on. Still, for Riley's sake, they maintained a fragile truce. Family dinners where forks scraped plates like accusations, evenings on the terrace where the sea's roar drowned out the silence. It was Riley who began piecing together the puzzle, her child's curiosity a detective's lantern. Late one night, while Dakota edited photos on her laptop, Riley slipped into the office, her bare feet silent on the saltillo tiles. Mom, look what I found. She held out her tablet, screen glowing with a frozen video call log, Delisa's, hacked via a forgotten password shared in better days. Time-stamped weeks ago, Sophia's face, laughing, as Delisa confessed, the money's coming through tomorrow. We'll be free. Dakota's breath caught, but Riley's eyes burned with something fiercer than tears. She's not sorry. But I know how to fix it. What followed was a plan born of innocence and iron will, a 12-year-old's rebellion against the adults who'd failed her. Riley had been saving her own allowance, a piggy bank of euros from chores and birthday cards, but that was pennies. No, her scheme was bolder, leveraging the very community they'd built in Spain, the expat network of artists and dreamers who'd become family when blood ties frayed. The next morning, as mist clung to the hills like regret, Riley marched into the village market, her backpack slung low. Dakota watched from the cafe, heart pounding, as her daughter approached Elena, the local potter with a workshop full of fierce ceramics and fiercer gossip. "Senora Elena, I have photos. Mom's photos. Of the cliffs at dawn. They could sell." Elena raised a brow, but Riley pressed on, her voice steady, "For the fund. The one that got stolen." Word spread like wildfire through the mercado, whispers of Dakota's talent, the family's quiet crisis. By noon, offers trickled in. A gallery in Cadiz wanted 10 prints at premium. An American tourist couple, hearing the tale, pledged a custom commission. Delisa arrived home to find the kitchen transformed, Riley at the table, surrounded by sketches of exhibition layouts, Dakota on the phone haggling prices. "What's happening?" Delisa's voice trembled, blue eyes wide. Riley looked up, her freckled face set like stone. "We're turning the tables, Mama D. You took the money for your lover. Fine. But we're making it back, without you." The words landed like stones in still water, rippling through the room. For the first time, Delisa saw her daughter not as the baby she'd cradled, but as a force, a girl who, in the shadow of betrayal, had learned to build bridges from broken beams. As the expat community's whispers turned to action, the villa buzzed with an energy that felt both foreign and familiar, like the first rain after a drought. Dakota's darkroom became a command center, negatives drying on lines strung like holiday lights, while Riley played curator, pinning contact sheets to the walls with colorful tack salvaged from her art supplies. "This one," she'd declare, pointing to a silhouette of jagged rocks against a fiery sunset, "it's like us, strong, even when the waves crash." Dakota would smile, a real one for the first time in weeks, ruffling Riley's curls. "You're the artist here, Bean. I'm just the developer." Delisa hovered on the periphery, a ghost in her own home, brewing café con leche no one drank and folding laundry with mechanical precision. Her attempts at involvement, offering to drive prints to the framer, suggesting taglines for the show, were met with polite deflections. "We've got it covered," Dakota said one afternoon, her tone even but edged, as she packed a crate of matted photos. Riley, overhearing from the courtyard, added softly, "You could help by not calling Sophia anymore." The words hung, a guillotine blade mid-fall. Delisa's phone, once an extension of her hand, now sat silent on the mantel, its screen dark as her promises. The betrayal's tendrils reached deeper than finances, they poisoned the air they breathed. Nights brought flashbacks for Dakota, the way Delisa's laugh used to dance through the finca like wind chimes, now replaced by the hollow echo of solitude. She'd wander the rooftop terrace, Leica in hand, framing shots of the moonlit sea, endless, indifferent. "Why her?" she'd whisper to the stars, the question a liturgy of loss. Sophia wasn't just a lover, she was the embodiment of what Dakota feared most, that their life in Spain, with its sun-bleached romance, had become a gilded cage for Delisa's ambitions. Back in New York, Delisa had thrived on the hustle, the neon pulse of deadlines. Here, amid the siestas and stone walls, perhaps she'd withered, seeking Sophia's electric spark to reignite her. Riley, meanwhile, navigated the storm with a maturity that both awed and terrified Dakota. At school, she channeled her hurt into essays on resilience in expatriate literature, quoting Hemingway's Spanish Ghosts as if they were old friends. Her friends, a mix of local kids with olive skin and rolling R's, and fellow expat brats with braces and Fortnite obsessions, rallied around her, organizing a photo booth fundraiser at the next village fiesta. For Riley's future fund, they dubbed it, turning Dakota's images into backdrops for silly selfies, euros pouring in like confetti. But beneath the bustle, cracks widened. One humid evening, as thunder grumbled over the Sierra Nevada, Delisa cornered Dakota in the garden. The air smelled of wet earth and impending storm, petrichor mingling with the faint tang of regret. "I ended it," Delisa said, her voice raw, blue eyes pleading in the lantern light. "Sophia's out. The money, I wired what I could recover, but it's not enough. Please, Dakota. Let me make this right. She reached for Dakota's hand, calloused from camera grips, but Dakota pulled back, the motion instinctive as flinching from flame. Right? Like erasing the nights you lied to our face. The way you looked at Riley like she was an inconvenience. Dakota's words tumbled out, laced with the grief she'd bottled. Rain began to patter on the leaves, soft at first, then insistent. We built this for her, for us. And you tore it down for a fantasy. Delisa sank onto a stone bench, head in hands, shoulders shaking. I was scared. Of fading here, of becoming just. Mama D, Sophia saw the designer in me, the fire. But you see all of me, the mess and the magic. I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. The confession cracked something in Dakota, a fissure where anger met ache. She sat beside her wife, the bench cold between them, rain soaking their shirts. I see you still, Dakota murmured, voice thick. But seeing isn't forgiving. Not yet. They sat there as the downpour intensified, water streaming down their faces, mingling tears with sky's own sorrow. It was the closest they'd come to touch since the revelation, a fragile armistice born of shared ruin. Riley watched from the kitchen window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. She clutched a sketchpad, pages filled with villa floor plans, not for escape, but for reclamation. Her plan had evolved beyond fundraisers. Inspired by a library book on investigative journalism, she'd started documenting everything, emails printed and filed, bank logs timestamped, even voice memos of Delisa's late-night pacing. Evidence, she called it, her green eyes narrowing like a lawyer's. But at night, when the house slept, she'd curl into Dakota's side, whispering, "Do you think Mama D can change? Like in those stories where the bad guy turns good?" Dakota would hold her tighter, the weight of truth heavy. People can change, Riley. But it takes more than words. It takes time, and trust we have to rebuild, brick by brick. The community's embrace swelled the fund. A Seville collector snapped up a series on exile and embrace, netting €5,000 overnight. Elena the Potter hosted a pottery painting night, proceeds earmarked for Riley's dreams. Even the village priest, Father Miguel, with his twinkle-eyed sermons on forgiveness, slipped Dakota a donation from the parish coffers. La Familia es Sagrada, he said, pressing the envelope into her palm. Sacred family. The words mocked and mended in equal measure. Yet, as the high tide of support crested, undercurrents stirred. Sophia, sensing the tide turn, reached out, not with remorse, but retaliation. A curt email to Delisa, "If you think this hillbilly art show will bury us, think again. I've got connections." Attached was a draft press release, positioning Sophia as the jilted visionary, funding underrepresented artists, with veiled barbs at domestic distractions. Delisa deleted it, but the poison seeped, doubt, that old serpent, coiling in her gut. Climax brewed on the eve of the big exhibition, a pop-up in Cadiz Old Town, where cobblestone streets wound like veins through history. Riley, in a rare moment of vulnerability, confessed her deeper scheme to Dakota over churros at dawn. "I emailed a reporter. An American one, from that expat blog. Told her the whole story, not just the photos, but the theft. Anonymously, but with enough details to make Sophia squirm." Dakota's coffee cup paused mid-air, shock mingling with pride. "Riley, that's dangerous. What if it backfires?" Her daughter shrugged, cinnamon sugar dusting her lips. "Then we fight dirtier." "But Mom, she heard us." Time someone shone a light. The words echoed as they loaded the van, prints wrapped in tissue like fragile hopes. Delisa offered to help, her hands trembling on a frame. "Let me come. Please. I need to show you I'm in this." Dakota met her gaze, seeing the plea beneath the polish, the woman she'd loved through Brooklyn blizzards and Spanish siestas. "Okay," she said finally. "But no more secrets." "Riley, overhearing, nodded fiercely. Or we walk. Both of us. The drive to Cadiz was a taut symphony, radio crooning flamenco ballads, Riley chattering about crowd projections, the sea glittering like shattered glass on their right. Tension hummed, electric as the storm clouds gathering offshore. At the gallery, a converted warehouse with exposed beams and sea views, volunteers buzzed, hanging Dakota's work, vast canvases of Spanish wildness, intimate portraits of Riley laughing in olive groves, abstracts of fractured light that screamed of hidden pains. The opening loomed, a crossroads where art met atonement. As guests trickled in, expats in linen shirts, locals in embroidered shawls, a smattering of curious tourists, the air crackled. Riley, in her sundress and a name tag reading Junior Curator, greeted arrivals with a poise that belied her age, directing eyes to the centerpiece, a triptych titled Tides of Trust, waves crashing against a solitary figure on the shore. "It's about holding on when everything pulls away," she explained to a wide-eyed couple, her voice steady. Delisa mingled awkwardly, her designer eye critiquing the lighting, but her heart elsewhere. She caught Sophia's scent before the woman herself, jasmine and ambition, slipping through the crowd like a shadow. There, in a crimson dress that hugged her like a second skin, blue eyes scanning for weakness. "Delisa," Sophia purred, close enough for wine breaths to mingle. "This little circus. Charming. But we both know it's a bandage on a bullet wound." Delisa stiffened, glancing to where Dakota laughed with Elena, Riley orbiting like a proud moon. "It's over, Sophia. Go." But Sophia's smile was a blade. "Is it? Your wife's pretty pictures won't erase what we had. Or the money trail I can unravel with one call." The threat hung, venomous, as thunder rumbled distant applause. Riley, ever watchful, saw it unfold from across the room. Her small hand tightened on a champagne flute, non-alcoholic, Elena's insistence, and in that instant, the girl who'd planted herbs and dreamed of colleges became a tempest. She wove through the crowd, green eyes locked, and when she reached them, her voice cut clear, "Senora Reyes? I think you dropped this." She held out a USB drive, innocuous in her palm, but loaded with Riley's evidence, screenshots, recordings, the digital noose of truth. Sophia's laugh was forced, but Riley pressed on, volume rising just enough for nearby ears. "It's got all the pretty details. The transfers, the love notes. For the blog. Or the police." The room hushed, heads turning like sunflowers to scandal. Dakota arrived in a rush, pulling Riley back, but the damage bloomed, whispers rippled, phones emerged, the expat vine already telegraphing to Madrid. Sophia's facade cracked, eyes flashing fury before she spun on her heel, crimson vanishing into the night. Delisa stood frozen, then knelt before Riley, voice breaking. You did that for us." Riley's chin lifted, tears brimming but unspilled. "For Mom. For the fund. You broke it, I fixed it." The words were a mirror, reflecting the chasm and the bridge. In the aftermath of Sophia's retreat, the gallery pulsed with a new rhythm, not the polite murmur of art talk, but the charged hum of revelation. Guests clustered around Dakota's pieces, but eyes darted to the trio, Riley, small and unbowed, clutching the USB like Excalibur, Dakota, arm around her daughter, a shield of quiet strength, Delisa, on her knees amid spilled wine, face a map of remorse. Father Miguel, ever the peacemaker, steered the crowd toward the triptych with a gentle toast, to tides that turn, and hearts that heal. Laughter followed, tentative, but it broke the spell. Sales surged, 10,000 euros by night's end, the fund not just restored, but doubled, a phoenix from ashes. The drive home was silence woven with tentative threads. Rain lashed the windshield, wipers slashing like accusations, but Riley broke it first, from the back seat. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Mama D. Just stop the hurting." Delisa twisted, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. "I know, mi amor. And I'm sorry, for all of it. The lies, the theft, the way I let fear steal from the best parts of me. Dakota drove, knuckles white on the wheel, but her glance in the rear view held a softening. Actions, Delisa. Not just words. It was a gauntlet, thrown gently. Back at the finca, the storm raged full, lightning etching the hills in silver. They gathered in the kitchen, drenched and shivering, shedding wet clothes for hoodies and hot cocoa, Riley's ritual for bad nights. The space, once a battlefield, felt like neutral ground. Riley, fortified by marshmallows, laid out her terms like a treaty: no more secrets. We talk, really talk. And you help with the next show, Mama D, design the invites, make it yours. Delisa nodded, fingers tracing the mug's rim. Deal. And therapy, here, or online with that New York group for couples. I want to earn it back. Dakota listened, the weight of exhaustion mingling with hope's faint glow. Betrayal had carved canyons in her heart, but watching Delisa with Riley, braiding her damp curls, promising stories of brave women in history, stirred embers. Their love had been romantic once, all grand gestures and whispered vows. Now, it demanded the grit of survival, the humanism of flawed forgiveness. One step, Dakota said, bridging the table to squeeze Delisa's hand. For her. For us, maybe. The weeks unfurled like a slow-blooming rose, thorny but tender. Sophia's shadow lingered, a terse cease and desist from her lawyer, quashed by the blog post Riley's tip had sparked: art, affair, and atonement, an expat's reckoning. It went viral in niche circles, boosting Dakota's profile, but more importantly, it humanized their story: no villains, just people stumbling toward light. Delisa threw herself into amends, dismantling her Madrid ties, channeling designs into the family's creative orbit. She and Dakota attended virtual sessions, unpacking the why, Delisa's imposter syndrome, the cultural dislocation that amplified it, Dakota's own buried fears of inadequacy. Riley thrived, her college fund swelling to dreams of Brown University, where she'd study photojournalism and chase stories of resilience. She started a journal club at school, dissecting tales of queer families navigating storms, her insights precocious and profound. Love's not perfect, she'd say, echoing Dakota's late-night confessions. But it's worth the fight. The villa healed in echoes, mornings with three voices harmonizing over breakfast, evenings on the terrace where Delisa sketched while Dakota shot, Riley narrating their epic like a bard. Yet drama lingered, a undercurrent to their mending. One crisp autumn day, as saffron fields carpeted the hills, Sophia appeared unannounced at the finca's gate, a specter in sunglasses and silk, demanding closure. You ruined me, she spat, voice slicing the quiet. That post, my clients are fleeing. Delisa met her at the threshold, unflinching. No, Sophia. I ruined myself, chasing your mirror. We're done. Riley, peeking from the courtyard, hurled a lemon, missed, but the thud symbolized their line in the sand. Sophia left in a swirl of dust, the gate clanging finality. In the quiet that followed, the family gathered under the olive tree, its branches heavy with fruit. Dakota pulled out her camera, framing them, Riley cross-legged, sketching roots, Delisa leaning into Dakota's shoulder, blue eyes soft, the light slanting golden, forgiving. Our real story, Dakota murmured, snapping the shutter. Not the betrayal's blaze, but this, raw, rebuilt, romantic in its humanity. Months later, as winter's chill kissed the coast, they hosted a holiday gathering, expats and villagers mingling with mulled wine and mariachi records, Elena's pots brimming with paella. Riley gifted them a print from her own darkroom trials, a blurry trio by the sea, waves at their feet. Turning tables, she inscribed. Laughter rang out, toasts to second chances, and in a stolen moment amid the chaos, Dakota kissed Delisa, slow, sure, a vow renewed. Their love, once stolen and shattered, emerged transformed, not flawless fairy tale, but a dramatic tapestry of conflict and grace, woven on Spanish soil with American hearts. In the end, it was Riley, the 12-year-old alchemist, who turned poison to gold, reminding them that family wasn't blood or bank accounts, but the fierce choice to hold on, through every tide.